Entrepreneurs on born that brew. You are now listening to the Entrepreneur Podcast with your host, Adam McChesney. Let's grow.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur Podcast. I am your host, Adam McChesney, and I want to thank you for being here today. Thank you to Half Coast Studios for all that they do in getting the podcast produced and distributed, along with sponsoring the show. If you're looking to start your podcast or take your current one to the next level, then you need to come check out what they have going on. Contact them today for a free consultation. If you're listening, please be sure to subscribe to the show and leave us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. We would love for you to share this content on social media by tagging me and our guest. And this way we can get this out to more people. Today, we have another great episode lined up for you. This is an episode in someone that I've wanted to have on the show forever. Since the very beginning. He's someone that I've known for almost 3 years now, and very few people have had the impact on me that he's had. I don't say this lightly, so I'm really excited for the audience for this episode. I want you to make sure that you listen to this episode because it's going to change lives. I listened and watched everything that this guy does and how he operates his life to the person he is as a father and husband, and everything he does to be a leader in his life and his company. I have been coached and mentored by him for years. I believe in everything this guy stands for with his mission and purpose, and I'm lucky not only to be a client of his, but more importantly, a friend. My guest today is Mike Claudio. He is the owner of WinRate Consulting, host at the Big Stud podcast, and has a nonprofit called The Champion Shoes. He's a best-selling author, speaker, and coach. Above all, he's an incredible husband and father. Mike, welcome to the show.
Man, that's a mouthful of an intro there, man.
It is. It's well-deserved, though. So I wanted to make sure I knocked that one out of the park.
No, I appreciate it, man. No, it's been a journey. I mean, obviously, we met kind of both in our, we'll say, humble beginnings, trying to figure out who we want to be when we grow up. And, I think we've both been on a journey. And I think, watching what you've done specifically in the last year as you've, overcome hurdles, this typical growth pains that most people go through, and what you did, and I think why you, respect me the way you do. And I respect you as well. Like, you didn't change who you are to accomplish the outcome. I think we meet so many people out there that have to change who they are to fit in somewhere or be somebody or have this character that they're performing as opposed to being themselves. And obviously we play different roles and there's different perspectives, but I think you've done a great job, not only being yourself, but, unapologetically living up to your own standards. And I think it's been a huge part of your journey in the last year that I've been able, lucky enough to watch and be a part of.
No, I definitely appreciate that. And I know we were just talking before the show recorded. I think there's a lot of things that have taken place over the course of the last year that have made us, specifically into who we are today. And I just give kudos to you. I still remember that I joined Apex, and the next day I got a message from you, and you're like, hey, give me a call, because it was right before the first Apex Entrepreneur Meetup. And you were the first person to reach out to me, just gave me 30 minutes of your time, like no questions asked. And it was, I still remembered it to this day, the exact conversation. And it's just amazing the mentality that you've had with me and a lot of people from the beginning. So I can't thank you enough.
No, I mean, and what I always tell people is you thank me by doing the work. There's nothing worse than giving somebody great advice and they do nothing with it, which is like, people think like, oh, you charge because you're needy. It's like, no, I got tired of wasting my time giving free advice and no one doing anything with it. Mm-hmm. It's amazing how many people I have had that same 30-minute conversation with that, maybe it was the wrong time, or maybe it wasn't the right delivery, or maybe the information was skewed, or maybe some of the assumptions I made were wrong, but ultimately nothing changed post call for that person. Mm. And that's it's like, swinging and missing is like the most exhausting thing you can do. Right.
Yeah.
Whether you're swinging a golf club or throwing a punch or whatever, swinging and missing is like exhausting. Mm. I can't tell you how many times I have poured into somebody for it to be underutilized. And, a big part of why, I've adjusted, and kind of protected my time more differently over the last couple of years is, it's when I'm poured into somebody or locked into somebody, it's impactful, and like not in a cocky way. 300 or 400 people I've coached now, it works. Mm. And so there has to be a certain threshold that we hold ourselves to when we want to pour out the best versions of us. And something I learned, God has funny ways of showing us things, but something I learned, I say too late in the game, but probably right when I was supposed to learn it, is like, not everybody deserves the best version of us. Takers don't have a limit, but givers do. And I'm one of those like people pleasers, givers. Like, I'll give you everything I have. And like that 30-minute phone call was not a, hey, you're in Apex, do you want to sign up for WinRate? That's not the call that was. It was, hey, dude, I met you. You're here. How can I help? Who can I connect you to? Like, I was like, how do I help speed your rate to success? And ultimately I realized that I'm not going to change who I am to protect myself. I'm just going to change who I'm willing to give access to it. Because I can't turn it off. Like I physically can't. Like, I mean, the TCC event was 4 straight days of me pouring out, man. And it was like the longest, greatest week ever. But like, I can't turn it off, and I'm not going to turn it off. But I think so many people have to change who they are to protect themselves from takers. I just chose to put up a different barrier, and not everybody appreciates that. Not everybody respects that. Not everybody understands that. And that's okay, because my happiness and my joy and my energy to do my role as husband, father, leader is my job. Like, I have to protect that. And I think, I don't know, it's been an interesting journey, but that's probably one of the biggest things is like understanding, appreciating like who I can pour into like that without being empty all the time.
Yeah. I still remember one of the things that you said last year at the TCC Q1 meetup was appreciate your own time.
Yeah.
There was some sort of phrase that you did. Otherwise, other people aren't going to appreciate the time you're giving them. And that was like the one of the biggest aha moments I had from that event, because you're right. Everything that you just mentioned is absolutely true. So I'm excited to have our audience get to know you a little bit better, kind of dig in. If you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about your story, who you are, where you came from, and everything you have going on now, that would be awesome.
Yeah. So I'm currently, CEO of WinRate Consulting. We're a one-on-one business coaching company. So we provide one-on-one coaching, to entrepreneurs. The primarily part of our audience is contractors, and then service providers of contractors is kind of the outliers. But husband, I've been married to Tiff for 10 plus years now. We celebrate our 10-year anniversary in October. I have 2 sons. MJ is 7, Everett is 4. So they're getting super active now. Like, it was actually cool. I was in the gym this morning doing footwork drills with MJ at 6:30 this morning. He's out there doing ladder drills with me, which I was like, I'm in this like balancing act now of like, that's my time. Give me my time back. But like, I want to do this with you. And it's like, I have to sacrifice some things in that process. But, you mentioned host of the Big Stud podcast. I'm on like episode 340 or something, which is crazy how much of that content I put out over the last, the first episode of that was, I think it was October 2019. So like, that's crazy to think about. I'll call myself a YouTuber now because I have 10,000 subscribers. I'm not sure when you can officially say I'm a YouTuber, but I got 10,000 subscribers now, which is kind of cool to see that grow. Obviously, published author, #2Strong, how to win fast and win often in a world full of obstacles. Overall, we nonprofit. There's so many things. It's hard to keep up with it. So Champions Shoes nonprofit was something that a passion project that Tiff and I started. Ultimately, all those things combined, it kind of, I want to build champions by having an impact with every conversation I have. Like, that is my personal mission statement. And so all of those things, even though they may seem independent, work together to accomplish that outcome, right? So whether it's the time with my kids, time with my wife, the nonprofit, like, people underestimate, like, we've donated like almost 6,000 pairs of shoes in the last 2 years. Like, that's a lot of shoes. Like, starting from hey, hopefully we can get 100 pairs out to 6,000 pairs in 2 years. Like, that's a lot, because every pair gets wrapped, every pair gets a handwritten card, every pair gets socks. Like, it's a process. And so it's all relative to this unified desired outcome of like, I am incredibly good at and passionate about helping people. I have found a niche in coaching small business owners. And like, look, there's so many coaches out there. And like, I'm sure there's people that think I'm just like everybody else and like full of shit. And like, to some people, I probably am. It's fine. But I understand who my target audience is. And those people who believe in what I do love it. right? Like there's no one in TCC that's kind of okay. They're either like obsessive compulsive or they're just not a part of it. There's no middle ground with what we do. And so like the light bulb, as you might on our logo, that was developed because watching the light bulb turn on for people is where this whole thing started. Like that aha moment where they understand they can dream selfishly and they can protect their time. Like, hey man, appreciate everyone's time, including your own, is one of our core values. So I was probably reviewing that as part of the playbook for Q1 last year. And like just giving you that permission to say, oh, I am actually in control of my time. I don't have to be exhausted and miserable all the time. I don't have to do business with people I don't like. I don't have to keep employees that aren't fulfilling my mission and core values. Like, those are the moments that like make this whole thing work, because I am also a victim of being too much in my business, you know, and so like I have 10 coaching calls today. No, nine in this podcasting recording. Like you're the 7th call I've had today, but my energy is the same. I'm just as excited. Like, and I pour out into all of those, but I'm able to get energy back because of the impact that I know I'm making. And early on, I wasn't sure, right? Early on, it was, I didn't know what coaching was from an industry perspective. So I was like a year and a half in. It wasn't until I joined Arete at the beginning, you know, like spring 2019, which was almost 2 years into coaching, over a year into the business, that I even really knew what this industry was. I just knew I liked helping people. And so, you know, I guess it's a really long answer to your question of who am I and what have I done? But like, ultimately, I've built a mission around building champions and helping people win by determining and defining what does winning mean to them. And our nonprofit, it's just putting brand new shoes on kids' feet who can't afford them. Like it's really an anti-bullying movement. Mass has given away cool shoes. But like winning to those kids, when you're like a 6th grader who's never had a new pair of shoes or a pair of shoes that fits right, and you can walk in, like everybody knows that feeling of a new pair of shoes. You can't replicate any other way. Winning to that child is getting to go to school the next day with a brand new pair of shoes on, maybe for the first time in their life. Winning on the other side is like helping guys like you develop a selfish outlook for like, what does winning to me look like? And then developing tactics and processes and systems and mindsets around following through on that mission. That's who I am. I build champions. I help them create clarity on what that means. And then I live it. I'm not perfect. Like people, I yell at my wife sometimes. I yell at my kids sometimes. Like I suffer from the same shortcomings everybody else does. The difference is my mistakes don't define me, because I reset every day of my morning routine. I reset every day of my championship legacy. I reset every day of my championship day. So like my mistakes don't carry out, which I know you know what I'm talking about. Like when you start to get down that momentum going downhill, all of a sudden you go 2 weeks without working out, or you went from I'm going to drink on Saturdays, so I'm drinking every fucking day again somehow. I don't know how I got here, but oh my God, here we are. And it's like my consistency in upholding the standard comes from my incredibly monotonous routine to remind myself what winning looks like to me and being able to hold myself to that standard on a daily basis.
No, I love that. I appreciate you sharing that, because I think that's one thing that most people struggle with is that routine. And that's what I've struggled with in the past. And I think the way that you're vulnerable with your content and the way that you're vulnerable when you talk about stuff on your podcast, your YouTube channel, and then at these in-person events, it's literally like eye-opening for people that are in the audience that, again, look up to you, that you're like, hey, no, like I have the same struggles, but this is what I do. You have those checks and balances that you talk about to keep you in line. And I think that's what most people think. They look up to you and they're like, man, I can never be like Mike. I can never be. And you're like, no, like literally I've been in your shoes. And I think that's the coolest thing, because most people do try to, you know, have that persona that they are perfect, and that social media ends up being a highlight reel. So I just appreciate your vulnerability, and that's what really helps us connect and get to that next level.
No, I agree.
So kind of going into some of the next stuff that we'll talk about here with some key ingredients as far as your journey goes, what are 3 things that have made you successful as an entrepreneur thus far?
I mean, falling in love with the routine is definitely part of it. Like that was something I learned way early in my adult career. So like I worked in corporate America for over 9 years before I got into small business and construction and everything. And, you know, when it comes to sales, like I was in sales, I did retail sales management, B2B, corporate sales. And, you know, what you learn over a 9-year career in sales is like, you got to fall in love with the process because the results are going to vary. And so early on, it was like, I'm going to do X amount of prospecting. I'm going to do X amount of handwritten cards. I'm going to do X amount of meetings, X amount of follow-ups. Like I was just falling in love with the process and the results will show up. They just always do. And so now I take that to an extreme, I think almost now in like my discipline in my morning routine and how I get myself ready. You know, this is like the next progression area of that same point. I'm going to get 2 more, I promise. You know, did you play sports growing up?
Played soccer.
Okay. So something that I got preached at playing baseball, I don't know if it was the same in soccer, was do the best you can to warm up the same for every game. So you go into that feeling normal. Right? If you warm up differently, your body feels differently going into competition. Right. And so that's where my obsession with this morning routine came from is if I can warm up the same every day, I'll know my mind, body, and soul is ready to take on the challenges of that day. I think people wake up and then they're just like kind of like protecting themselves. Like, when's that first hit going to come? And then we'll solve the problems as they show up. No, like I want to be ahead of it. I want to be on top. I want to be prepared. I want to be warm. I want to be ready. I want to go into competition, which is what we're in every day. I want to go into competition as prepared as possible in that moment. So that falling in love with the process, morning routine, warming up the same is kind of all one. Like if you can get yourself to optimal performance on a daily basis, the results are still going to vary, but your attention to detail and you living up to your own standards won't go be on a roller coaster like the results are. Because I can't control who's going to sign a contract, who's going to cancel their contract, who's going to do what I told them to do in our coaching call, who's going to follow through. I can't control any of that. But I can be ready for this podcast. I can have the energy ready. I can eat lunch on time. I have to do my morning routine. I can control my controllables. And if you just happen to like, you don't, but if like I've been on some interviews that were just fucking terrible, right? But I don't internalize that. I'm like, hey, I was here. I did my job. I prepared. I organized. I did my routine. I was ready to bring energy. That's what I can control. And so I think that's one answer. You know, I think something, I'm actually trying to turn this into like almost a keynote speech is like the ability to dream selfishly. Like you've heard me talk about that a lot over the last year because it kind of dawned on me because I've been trying to figure out like, how do I get people to get this clear and this okay being like creating their vision of success. And ultimately it comes down to dreaming selfishly, where your ability to determine what winning looks like to you with no external inputs, not what she thinks, he thinks, they think, what you believe success looks like for you, and being 100% okay with that eliminates so much processing power from the routine because it pulls and it allows you to put all that power into one outcome. And if you've seen anything over the last year, your ability to get clear on that can take massive action. Like look at your team, look at your success, look at like you couldn't have prepared for the revenue you did in 2022. No, you got selfish on who you wanted to be because there's 2 types of selfishness. There's selfishness to take from others. Like there's that I'm an empty bucket and I'm just going to keep taking from everybody because my bucket stays empty. That's one version of selfish. There's another version of selfish of who you're going to allow access to your bucket or what you're going to allow access to your bucket. So your bucket stays full for the things that matter. Like you ever like go to an event because you just said you would, and you like you literally on the way there were miserable. There you were miserable. The way back you were beating yourself up because you went, you knew you shouldn't have. Yes, the answer is yes. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. So like you didn't protect your bucket. You showed up and you got drained the whole time and you came back worse than you left. Saying no to that event where many people may not understand, you know why you're saying no. And then you build that self-confidence. I can live up to what I say I want to be. I can have the things I say I want to have. I can be the man or woman I say I want to be because I'm willing to stand for it. And not that, hey, I'm really sorry you're upset, but I need to do this for me. Mm-hmm. Right? Like I've canceled and I've said no to all podcasts. You're the first podcast interview I've done this year on someone else's podcast.
I appreciate that.
Because I said Q1, I got to go full internal. Like I don't need to be on more audiences. I have done my content duty, man. I'm over 500 YouTube videos, 340 my own, probably 200 interviews. I'm over 1,000 pieces of primary content. I did my job. I'm taking a quarter and I'm focusing inside on my company, right? But people are like, what do you mean no? Like, I'm not sure when you thought you could DM me to ask me to be on your podcast and me saying no was some form of insult. Like, you don't know what my priorities are. You basically broke into my front door, said, let's hang out. And I said no. And now you're offended. We feel like we owe people because they asked and we have to say yes. But if you say yes to everything, you can't be the man or woman or lead. It would just be empty. And I spent years empty. And unfortunately for me, it wasn't until I attempted suicide in 2019 that I really made the full pivot to, I have to make decisions based on only my opinion, or I may not survive this. And I'm not trying to like glorify it, but like that moment in that day, I had to make a decision to either go all in on me. And what I mean by that is make decisions solely based on what I think is best, or I may not survive this season. Because like, it wasn't it's the only time I've been that far down the path. Like I put 25 pills in my mouth. Like that's like, I was that close, man, to not being here anymore. Like that fucking close. It wasn't just like the next day, okay, I'm all in on me. This is great. Sunshines and rainbows. No, it was like weeks of still wanting to throw myself in front of a fucking car. Like I was going on walks in the neighborhood, like convincing myself not to do it. And so, but one decision at a time rebuilt that win fast, win often for me was a survival mechanism. It wasn't some fancy tagline. It was like, if I don't win the next decision and I don't win often enough, I may slide back down and die. And so that selfishness for me, for my wife, for my sons, built everything that I am today. And so dreaming selfishly is, I guess, ingredient number 2. And ingredient number 3 is understanding that, like, this too shall pass. I actually released a podcast, I think actually this morning, ironically. No season will maintain, good or bad. And so, like, nothing's ever as good or as bad as you think it is. Ever. And we get, like, really high in business. And we're like, we're the best ever. This is great. And all of a sudden, like, 2 weeks later, you're like, I am the worst business owner in the world. I should go get a job, right? And that, like, never goes away. And so what I've learned, and maybe this ingredient that's helped me be a successful entrepreneur at this point, is no matter what's happening today, it will not last. And so I have to maintain my standard. I have to maintain control of what I can control. I have to maintain my activity, my preparation, my organization, my clarity, my visualization. All this shit has to maintain, because whether it's good or bad, it will not last. And that allows you to just enjoy the journey more. You know, because I can live up to the man I want to be today, no matter what's happening around me. Because with or without win rate, I will build champions one conversation at a time. With or without win rate, I will be married to Mike Claudio. With or without win rate, I will be the father to MJ and Everett. What else really fucking matters? I will maintain my mission. I will maintain my family. My kids love me. They talk all the time, man, I miss the townhouse. Get out of here. We live in an 8,000 square foot house with a brand new pool. You miss the townhouse? I hated that shit. But to them, they, quote unquote, grew up in that house. Mm-hmm. We lived there for 2.5 years of MJ's life. What he misses is we're like right across the street from the park is what he misses. But that that ability to enjoy the day, like blissful dissatisfaction is the first time I've heard it articulated. It was by Ed Milet, blissful dissatisfaction. But for me, what that means is I'm going to be happy today and I'm going to be better tomorrow, no matter what the results are today. Because it will not last. Good, bad, or indifferent, it will not last. And it'll change and it can get better. It can get it'll evolve. But no matter what's happening right now, as long as you maintain control of the controllables, you maintain control of your actions and your behavior and your attitude and your routines, it will be different tomorrow. Mm-hmm. If you don't maintain control of your habits and routines and emotions, it will be different tomorrow. And so I really focus right now on how can I maintain being happy today and still be better tomorrow. And that's just, it's never as good or as bad as you think it is. And no matter what's happening right now, it will not last. It will be gone at some point, or it'll be different no matter however you want to measure that. So I don't know. That's 3 very long worded answers to your question.
No, that was great. I appreciate you diving into all that stuff and sharing that, especially I think about the win fast and win often. I love the behind the scenes of what that actually means. I think a lot of people are just like, oh, let's just go win, win, win. It's like, no, you overcomplicate the most simple things in life. And waking up and following your routine and, doing whatever is on your championship day, for example, those are wins. And we fall into that cycle of not counting the wins and not understanding how big some of these little wins are. So I really love always kind of talking about that and hearing that story. The thing I want to get into next here is kind of just talking about a big lesson that you've learned across your journey thus far. So if you had to signify one of the biggest lessons you've learned that you would share with an entrepreneur that's just getting started to save them years worth of mistakes, what would that be?
My answer, when I saw this question originally, I kind of went in a couple of different directions, but I looked back over the last 5 years, right? So WinRate's been around for 5 years. And if I look at specifically the enjoyment of the journey and where I felt like I was winning and where I felt like I was losing, no matter what was really happening on the results side, because we've grown every year by multipliers, right? I think more people need to have a defined strategy to plan the mission with their spouse. Because when shit at home ain't right, nothing's right. You ain't sleeping right. Your workouts ain't right. Your calls ain't right. Your sales presentations ain't right. Your ability to lead your team ain't right. Your ability to just minimize anxiety and depression ain't right. And I don't think I'm unique in this. I put some thought on this saying well, am I the only one that? I don't think I am. I think most people underestimate. If I look at some of our clients that I've had in the past, where the ones who won the most typically had full alignment with their spouse. The ones that struggled more typically had friction at home. And so it's incredibly powerful that not only does your spouse understand their current role in your mission, but also what is the mission and what is their role when the mission becomes successful. Hey, babe, right now I need you to be this. This is where I plan to take this. This is what that means for you when we get there. And helping them understand why, because one of the more consistent things that I hear specifically related to marriages is the spouse asking a question in some form around, when do I get to be done sacrificing for you? When is it my turn? Right? And typically that question can be worded differently, but that's typically the question that arises when the spouse doesn't understand the role they're playing, because they look at it as a sacrifice of what they truly want, as opposed to an investment into what they actually want down the road. Because if they understand why they're sacrificing, it turns into an investment. I'm investing this time, energy, effort so that I can get this return, not just I'm continually putting my life on hold while you keep failing business after business after business. When's it going to be my turn? If your spouse has ever said that, that means they don't understand they're on the same mission you're on. They think their mission is pause while you're off doing your own thing. That's a mistake. And well, Mike, she just doesn't understand, or he just doesn't understand. Well, then you did a shitty job explaining it. Or you did a shitty job actually following through on what you said you were going to do. So your lack of execution and alignment with the mission you told them that was happening, they don't believe a fucking thing you say. So if there was one thing that I would suggest, and if you're a single entrepreneur, then this advice doesn't mean anything to you. But if your spouse is not on board fully and fully understands what their role is in your mission, both now and as the mission progresses, you will end up significantly further behind than you would otherwise.
Yeah. I still remember a conversation that we had last year, and you were like, I was in my mind thinking, oh, wow, I just don't know how Delaney can't understand what I'm trying to accomplish and all these different things. And you were like, well, have you explained it to her? Have you gone in depth and planned with her? And I'm like, no. And you're like, well, of course she's not. Like, I'm over here thinking that she's crazy, or like that something like is drastically wrong. And it's like, no, that falls back on me, because I didn't do a good enough job of helping her understand where she fits in, helping understand how it benefits her, and then also planning with her to be able to go do those things. So I can firsthand attest to that. But I've seen with a ton of people that has been a key differentiator in the growth. So I love that.
I just think people get so consumed by their own problems. They just assume that the other person has all the same perspectives. Mm-hmm. Right. And like, bitch, you're like, bitch, I'm problem solving over here. Why are you being so selfish? And it's like, okay, look, I know from experience, I know what that feels like. Mm-hmm. You know, but also I think, you know, I don't say so few, but I have seen a lot of stories where one person asks for a sacrifice and then doesn't follow through on what they said they were going to do to like justify the other person's sacrifice. Mm-hmm. You know, like why Tiff trusts me so much, and why Lindsay's, I think, in the same way, not my spouse, but she's been on the team for 3.5 years. She trusts me at this point because she knows I'm going to follow through. When I say, Linz, trust me, this is going to work. Like, I'm going to do this. She knows I'm going to go do what I said I'm going to do, which is why she's been able to evolve with the company this for this long. Mm-hmm. I mean, the company, like when she started in 2019 compared to where the company is now, and she's been like my Swiss Army knife, like secret weapon. She just keeps evolving because she trusts me. And so she's willing to put the sacrifice in to evolve as a person on my team. Different dynamic, but same concept, because of clarity and following through on. I said, do this. I will do this. This will be the outcome. Mm-hmm. I think so few people are willing to follow through on what they say they're going to do, like just in life, that people just assume you're not going to. Mm-hmm. Until you prove them otherwise. And I'm really good at proving people otherwise.
Yeah, you definitely are. I think the other thing that I know I said for a while, and a lot of other people will say too, is that, oh, I'm doing this for you, if you're talking to your spouse, or I'm doing this for the family. And then you don't realize that like you're negatively impacting them, because all they really want is you.
Yeah. All
they really want is your time and your attention. It kind of goes back to respecting your time, but being present in the moment and putting them above anything else that's going on. I think is a massive difference as well.
Yep.
So we'll kind of wrap things up here, Mike, kind of talking about what's next. I know you have a lot of exciting things going on, especially WinCon coming up. Yeah. So would love to dive into that and talk to us about what you have planned for that and everything in the future for WinRate Consulting and everything else, Mike Claudio.
Yeah, so like 2023 for us is a stabilizing year. You know, like there's a lot of newness still. Like we're at a new customer count. Like I think we have like 97 clients or something like that, which is like a huge number of people overall. You know, I got 9 coaches that are working on staff. We got 17 total employees. Like we are at a position right now that there's still a lot of blind spots that I'm unaware of at this point, of things that could go wrong. And so 2023 is a stabilizing year. Like I'm not looking to grow that much. I've pulled back on a lot of events. I've pulled back on a lot of content creation that's not my own. And so 2023 is very internally focused for me as a person, but as a brand, you know, we're throwing our first conference this year in April as a test run. This is like this year one's, we're looking at it as a test run for next year. So WinCon 2023, you know, ultimately be WinCon 2024, and so on and so forth. You know, my plan is to do that in April every year. we have an app right now that I'm developing that will be released to our customer base in April, and then ideally to the public by the end of the year. I'm super excited about what this is going to do for our overall client experience and our coaching experience. It's going to change the game on how our clients engage with each other. It's not a social app. It's more of a it's a do the work competitive environment. I'm pumped about it.
Can't wait.
But I mean, it wraps all the things we teach, from the weekly check-ins, the championship day, to the champion's legacy, to the action items between coaching calls. Like, it's going to simplify and unify a lot of things that we do a lot of different ways. It'll automatically have the coaching calls show up right in your app for you, which I'm really excited about, because like people still don't know how to get to Google Drive. I don't understand, but it's fine. Mm-hmm. Those are the two big ones, the conference and the app. But ultimately, like, I'm still in my journey to become the CEO. Like, I committed in January 2022 that I will turn into the CEO, not the head coach, by end of 2022, which I believe I executed on effectively. Obviously, I still have clients. I still love coaching. Like right now, like, this might seem crazy, I have the least amount of clients I've personally coached in probably 2 years. Which is cool, but like also like I've 10x my internal meetings, right? So like, I sacrifice one to get the other, but really continuing the journey for me as CEO of this company, because I have influenced a lot of people through my actions. And I'm going heavy internal this year to continue that journey and multiply it across a dozen coaches. And really allow us to set and maintain the standard when it comes to running in an environment like this, because there's a lot of coaches out there. There's a lot of brands in this space. There's a lot of people promising a lot of things, and there's plenty of good ones too. But I'm really chasing this. I want to set the standard on what it looks like to be a one-on-one coaching company. There's a lot of great one-on-one coaches, but it's one of the more difficult things to scale. Not that it's not, all business is difficult, but like, I have to bring subject matter experts. Pretty much all of my coaches are CEOs. I have to lead them, right? It's new, it's challenging. Like I'm leading people that said they'd never work for anybody. All those people in their own ecosystem is fully in charge. They have to come into mine and like, shut the fuck up and sit down, play your role. And like, that shit's hard sometimes, right? But I think it's a testament to like my ability to maintain our internal standard and be consistently chasing the same mission has allowed people like that to buy into what we're doing and want to play the role that I provide them, right? It's because they believe in what we're doing. And so short answer of what's next is, WinCon, the app, but continuing to set the standard internally so that we can multiply this impact substantially over the next couple of years, because, the mission's going to grow because we operate with integrity and we get real results. Like it's easy to say that, right? But like, I don't know how to package what it feels like to be at a TCC event and explain it to a prospect. Like, until you're at one, you can't understand it. And like, it's just different. It's more vulnerable. It's more family. It's more tactical. It's more in the weeds. It's more, you can't hide from us. Like, you're going to walk away impacted. I don't know how to package that and like present it to somebody to show them what it's like to be a part of the event. Because even like, you've been to a bunch of events before you came to your first TCC, and now you're coming into your second year in the program. Like, even Q1 this year was just different, And so how do I continue to tell that story and set that standard and be that person that helps so many continue to get dream selfishly and build the championship version of their lives? That's what's next.
Love it. I'm excited to be a part of the journey and continue watching, man. I really appreciate you hopping on the podcast today.
Absolutely.
Where can people find out about more about you, WinRate, all that stuff, social links, things like that?
The best place to go is MikeClaudio.com. It's kind of a, central location for a whole bunch of stuff.
Perfect. We'll have that in the show notes. Mike, thanks again for coming on, man. I appreciate your time. I know you're super busy. I did not know that you were turning down every other podcast. So it's a blessing. I'm very grateful for you, the impact that you've had on my life, and just appreciate everything that you do, man.
Appreciate you, bud. I don't know. It's just got something stuck in my throat.
You're
Jesus.
Good. You're good.
Thanks, man.
Of course. And I want to thank you again to the audience for tuning in to today's podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, download, and share our content. Leaving a 5-star review goes a long way. We'll see y'all next week. And remember, entrepreneurs aren't born, they are brewed.
I'm an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs aren't born, they're brewed. Thank you for listening to Entrepreneur Podcast with your host, Adam McChesney.